Hello all, welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So this is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you our daily news analysis, and as usual for today's discussion we've picked up a number of articles from both the Hindu and the Indian Express which are important and relevant for your UPSC CSE examination. So as our routine, let us actually start with today's motivation, which is also giving us perspective on life as well as personal, the work as well as your personal life. So if you look at this particular quote, which is actually stated by Mr. Einstein, what does he say? Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. So this particular quote actually gives us a perspective of life. It actually says that in your path to achieve a personal level of success, what is the contribution and value you add to other people's lives is what is more important than your own achievement of your success. Okay. So with this motivation, let us actually move forward and get quick with our discussion. Okay. So we've actually picked up 5 articles for today's discussion. The first article being GM crops can help fight hunger. I'm sorry. Yeah. The first article has been picked up from, science section of the Hindu. GM crops can help fight hunger depending on farming methods. Okay. So this particular article discusses about the genetically modified crops. It says that there are a number of benefits and advantages associated with the GM crops. However, it has its own challenges like the health impacts and the environmental impacts it actually causes, like in terms of environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, requirement of more pesticides, and there is actually a possibility of gene transfer into the wild organisms. All these things we'll actually be discussing here, and also we'll be discussing about what are the different techniques of genetic modification and all those things, and also we'll be discussing about India's framework with respect to that of the same. So this is a very important topic, and moving forward, the second article has been taken from page number 12 of the Hindu again, which actually says planetary crisis puts children at the risk. That is, this is recently released UNICEF report, that is the state of children across the globe 2024 report that has been released by United Nations Fund for Children. Okay, so here we'll be discussing about what are all the potential threats that children might face starting from now to the period of 2050. So here we'll be discussing about 3 important mega trends that this particular report focuses on, and then we'll be discussing about the implications in detail. Moving forward, the third article has been picked up from page number 10 of the Hindu. Prime Minister proposes 7 key pillars to strengthen ties between India as well as CARICOM. So here, what is this particular grouping of CARICOM and how is it going to be very significant for that of India? When was it established? All those prelim facts will be discussed in this particular article. And moving forward, the fourth article has been picked up from the text and context page. That is, should packaged food content be labeled? So here we'll be discussing about the nutritional disparities that the low middle income countries face when compared to that of the high income countries. So here we'll be discussing about what is the significance of labeling the packaged food items, okay, and what is this HSR, that is the health standard rating, and how is it actually done, what are the regulations that India actually follows with respect to the same, and so on will be discussed in this particular article. Moving forward, the last article that will be taken up for discussion today is from the Indian Express, taken from page number 19, India's under trial prisoners. So here we'll be looking into who are these under trials, okay, whether these are people who are actually detained for no wrongdoings or whether they are those who are actually detained on, during the process they actually wait for their trial. So this is what the articles which we've actually taken up for discussion today. Now let us actually move forward and quickly start with the first article for the day, that is GM crops can actually help fight hunger depending on the farming method. Okay, so here this particular article becomes important because we'll be discussing about what are these GM crops as well as the regulatory framework for GM crops in India, and this becomes important under paper 2 under government policies and interventions as well as under biotechnology for GS paper 3. Okay, So let's move forward. There has been a previous year question that was asked in the year 2012, which are all the following characteristics, or other than resistance to pest, what are the prospects for which the genetically engineered plants have actually been created? That is basically what is the purpose of creating this particular genetically modified crops has been the question here. Now moving forward, let us actually see why this particular article is in news. Okay, so here this article generally actually talks about what is the significance or the advantages of GM crops. Okay, so what do you mean by GM crops? These are genetically modified crops. Okay, so they have various advantages. So one of the advantages include reduce pesticides, and next one is boost or increase the yield and productivity, but at the same time they have number of disadvantages also, that is the pest resistance as well as seed production monopolies. Okay, that is this production of genetically modified crops or the seeds that becomes monopolized by only certain companies. Okay, and also it actually causes a struggle between the wealthier versus not so wealthier farmers. So this is what it is. Now let's quickly move ahead to see what it is. So what are genetically modified crops? These are nothing but the plants altered by introducing the genetic material. You know the genetic material, right? Genetic material is nothing but DNA as well as RNA. Okay, so what happens is a particular gene or a desirable gene from a particular organism is actually taken, and it is actually inserted into the genetic material of the target organism. Okay, so this is what is called as the genetically modified crops. And what are these desirable genes? They actually have various properties, whatever desired characteristics that we actually want. Like for example, it can be drought resistant, or it can be pest resistant, or it can be increasing yield, okay, high productivity, etc. So whatever genes are associated with these, that is actually taken from organism number 1, and it is given to a target organism, or it is inserted into the genetic material of another organism. So these are genetically modified crops. Okay, now quickly moving forward, let us see what are the various methods for creating these genetically modified crops. Okay, so there are 6 methods. I will just tell you this very quickly, so that if you cannot see, let me zoom in for you. The first method, so here the first method is agrobacterium mediated transformation. This is nothing but there is actually a bacterium which is called as agrobacterium tumefaciens. Okay, so this is capable of natural transmission. That is, here it has the natural gene transfer ability of this particular bacterium, and this method is actually used for producing the genetically modified crops. Okay, so that is, this particular bacterium is used so that the genes of the target crop is altered naturally. So this is the first method. Second one is biolistic or particle bombardment. This is nothing but it is also called as the gene gun method. Okay, so let me minimize it because it's too big. Yeah, the next one is actually called as the gene gun method. Here what happens is that there are tiny metal particles that actually are coated with this genetic material, that is DNA. So that is actually inserted. So here it involves shooting of tiny particles coated with DNA into the plant cells, and this actually makes or transforms the gene of the plant species, and this actually includes those plants which are resistant to this agrobacterium as well. Next method is electroporation. That is nothing but electric field is actually applied on the cell membrane, so that it actually creates a number of pores, and then what happens is that the desired DNA is actually inserted or it is injected inside the target plant. Next one is micro injection. This is nothing but this directly injects the DNA into the nucleus of the target plant, and that is used or that is done by using a fine glass needle, and this is characterized by high precision. Okay, but at the same time this actually is very labor intensive. The next one is virus mediated transformation. This is nothing but they use modified viruses in order to transfer the gene to the target plant or the genetic material of the plant. So this is what is a virus mediated transformation. And the last cutting edge technique or the technology is nothing but the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing. So what do you mean by CRISPR-Cas9? Okay, so this is what is very, very important. CRISPR actually stands for clustered, regularly interspaced palindromic, that is short palindromic repeats. Okay, so this is nothing but a genetic modification technology. Okay, and this actually makes use of this particular protein called as Cas9. Okay, so this is nothing but clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, and this technology actually makes use of a protein that is called as Cas9 for this process of genetic modification, and this does not require injection of DNA, etc. Okay, so that is why this actually directly targets the gene, cuts it, just like how we do this cut copy paste command using a computer. So it's like that, it identifies the gene, it actually cuts it, and then it replaces it. Okay, so that is why this is also called as the genetic scissors. Okay, so these are the various methods that are actually used for this particular process. Now moving forward, let us actually see what are the advantages of GM crops. Okay, so GM crops, now the genes are actually modified or edited. Okay, so what happens now, there will be increase in the yield of crops, that is the production or the productivity of the crop is actually more, so increased yield. For example, if you see is BT cotton. So BT cotton has actually become too resistant to this particular pest, that is bollworms. Okay, that is pink bollworms that basically comes on these cotton crops. Okay, so this has actually become resistant towards these cotton bollworm infestation. Next one is pest resistance. Okay, so here the genetically modified crops, they are actually resistant to pests. Okay, so that is why what happens, our reliance on these pesticides actually decreases. So that will cause environmental benefits also. No, when we don't use chemical fertilizers, etc., the environment footprint actually becomes less. So here you can actually see the environment benefits. Next one is disease resistance. Okay, so of course, if you actually see in Hawaii, there is a breed of papayas, that is the genetically modified papayas. They are actually resistant to this particular ring spot virus. Also, there is improved nutritional value. If you see the golden rice, what happens is genetically modified in order to produce a protein or a a molecule, I can say, that is actually called as a beta carotene, and this is actually very, very rich in vitamin A. Okay, so this also reduces the nutritional deficiencies in many countries. So this is what it is. So these are the advantages of GM crops. Now moving forward, let us see what are all few of the GM crops which are actually in India. Okay, first one, if you see, is the BT cotton. So here this actually contains the genes from Bacillus thuringiensis, and this produces a protein toxic to the pink bollworm. So thereby it actually is resistant to the attack of this particular pest. Next one is BT brinjal. Okay, so this is to resist the fruit and the shoot borers. Okay, and also in 2009 the GEAC, this is nothing but the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. This is responsible for approving any crop that is actually pending approval for commercial cultivation. So this is what it is. So approved the BT brinjal, but the progress has actually been stopped by the activists. The next one is DMH, that is mustard. In October, same GEAC recommended the environmental release of this hybrid mustard for seed production. Also, if you see GM soy meal, this has actually been imported. Around 5,50,000 tons have actually been imported in order to cater or support the poultry industry, because the local prices of the poultry feed were increased. So this is what it is. The next one, what are the concerns associated with the GM crops? First is environmental impact. Of course, what happens is because you're modifying the gene, right? So the genes can actually move or flow into the other organisms also, and it affects the biodiversity and the ecosystem balance, because anyways it is done by artificial means, right? The next one, development of super weeds. Here what happens is that some species of bollworms become even resistant to these bt crops. Okay, so that kind of evolution is actually happening. Then also the insect resistance is there, and you have the human health risks because there are concerns about toxin consumptions as well as allergens into the body. And finally, there are socio-economic impacts also. That is, the wealthier farmer who is actually, able to adopt to this, that is, get seeds from these companies and all those things, they are actually advantages when compared to that of the poor farmers. And this actually does not ensure equitable distribution and benefiting of the GM crops. Okay, so this is what is this particular talking about, particular disadvantages about. Next one, let's see what are the India's regulatory framework with respect to the GM crops. First one, the if for example I actually want to cultivate for example BT brinjal for commercial purposes, what happens, who approves this is this GEAC. GEAC, as I told you, it actually stands for the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Okay, so this actually approves the use of genetically engineered organism. Next is your RCGM, that is nothing but your Review Committee on Genetic Manipulation. So this actually authorizes any kind of research, and if you want to conduct the biosafety risk assessment, this is the body that authorizes it. Next one is IBSCs. Okay, this is nothing but the Institutional Biosafety Committee. Okay, this actually ensures that there is biosafety compliance. And also, who does the monitoring? You have the state level committees that enforce safety and regulations at the state level, and you have the district level committees to ensure the safety at the district levels. Approval process, that is what happens is that first, if a crop is actually being produced, what happens, it is put under laboratory research, then they try it. Okay, so field trials are there, then public consultation is done, and finally it is actually sent for this to this GEAC review for commercial cultivation. And finally, if you see whether India has any kind of international obligations, yes, India is a signatory of the biosafety protocol, that is nothing but the Cartagena protocol. Very, very important. Okay, so this is what India's regulatory framework. Now moving forward, we will actually see this is the regulatory framework. For example, if a genetically modified crop has to be cultivated, what happens? There are two ministries. Okay, one is the Ministry of Science and Technology. Next is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Under that, there are different bodies, that is the Review Committee. Then you have the RDAC, that is Recombinant DNA Advisory Committee. And under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, you have Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. Then you have SBCC, that is State Biotechnology Coordination Committee. Then you have the DLC, that is District Level Committee. Okay, so all these bodies, so these are all except for GEAC, this is the approving committee. Okay, this approves it, and these are all the advisory committees. So they work in tandem, or they actually work in collaboration with each other in order to decide whether you need to put a crop under a commercial cultivation that is genetically modified or not. So this is the regulatory framework. Now moving forward, what are the regulatory lapses, or what are the issues with these regulatory framework in India is that first is of course you saw the complex process, right? It first goes to the ISBC, then it actually goes to GEAC, and then various stakeholders are actually involved. So that is also a lengthy process. It's complex and time consuming, and there is also lack of awareness. Okay, so public actually do not have trust, and there is no reliability because of the opaqueness of these particular developments. Next one, there is inadequate testing as well as monitoring infrastructure in India. Also, next is stakeholder consensus. Okay, so there are divergent views that the activists actually give. The government gives a different opinion, scientists give different opinion. So there is actually no consensus. and also political and public perception. That is, we have opinions from the pro as well as some people will be for it, some people will be against it. Okay, so this actually influences the policy as well as the regulatory decisions. So these are all the challenges which are associated with the regulatory framework. Okay, so what is the way forward? Of course, we need to actually enhance public awareness, because there are outreach programs in countries or in the unions. That is, for example, the European Union. Okay, so here there are outreach campaigns when people are made aware of these particular potential benefits of GM crops. Okay, so European Union is the best example. Next one, strengthening research and development. You need to invest a lot in state of art technology, and one such advanced technology is Israel. They have advanced agriculture technology research. Also, incorporating stakeholder input. Here there is actually something called as the polder model. So this is actually what to say, adopted by Netherlands, where there is actually consensus which is brought in building the policy decisions. Okay, next one is focus on farmer education and support. That is, you need to train them on what are the best practices for these kind of crop cultivation as well as management. And finally, if you see, robust post-market surveillance. That is, once it actually comes to the market, after that you need to check what are all the environmental and the health impacts that this particular crop is creating. Based on that, you need to make changes. And one best example is Australia's post-market surveillance. Okay, so these are all the simple things that you actually have to know about genetically modified crops. Okay, what are the benefits, what are the challenges, what are the regulatory frameworks, and with respect to regulatory frameworks, what are the challenges that faces, in India, and what are all the best examples that we discussed in way forward. Now moving forward, let's quickly solve this mains practice question. What are the GM crops and how can they contribute to addressing food security and environmental challenges in India? Also discuss the concerns and the challenges associated with GM crops and India's regulatory framework. So here, the approach to this particular question is actually divided into the introduction, body, as well as the conclusion. In the introduction, we will talk about the definition of GM crops. Okay, they are actually designed to be pest resistant, they are actually drought tolerant, climate resistant, etc. And also, what is the relevance of India? Okay, so whether we actually offer potential or conducive environment for this crops or not, we need to discuss. In the body, we will actually talk about its contribution to food security, because it's drought resistant, it increases the yield, it is actually pest resistant, it also adds nutritional value, like for example the golden rice. All these will be discussed over here. Next one, what are the concerns and the challenges? So however there are advantages, there are also challenges, like the environmental risk it poses, health and the socio-economic risks, as well as the regulatory delays. And as conclusion, you need to actually talk about genetically modified crops can actually, on the one hand, enhance the food security of India, but it actually requires very, very stringent regulations. It actually needs a wider infrastructure, a proper research in order to address the environmental health as well as the socio-economic concerns. Okay, so this is how you will actually structure your answer. So having discussed one of the most important topics, now let us move quickly to another very, very important topic, that is plenary crisis puts children at risk, a UNICEF report. As the title suggests, there has actually been a recent report which has been released by the UNICEF. Okay, so this is actually very, very important, and here it actually talks about what are going to be the potential challenges that the children are actually going to face starting from today till the year of 2050. So here this particular state of the world children report is important, as children form an integral part of the vulnerable sections of the population. So any schemes, any report on vulnerable populations, be it women, children, then you have the disabled as well as the aging or the elderly population, becomes very, very important for your examination. So here it can be mapped to GS paper 2, protection and betterment of vulnerable sections as well as human resources. Okay, so let us quickly move forward. There has been a previous year question on the national child policy. Okay, so here children become very, very important topic for discussion. Now let us actually see why this particular topic is in news. So the United Nations Children's Fund, So here it has released a report. The UNICEF has released a report titled State of the World's Children 2024, and the theme is the future of childhood in a changing world. So I'll actually give you an outline of what we are going to discuss. Okay, they are saying that children are going to face a number of difficulty under three mega trends. Okay, so what are these mega trends? The first is there is going to be demographic transition, that is change in the population. Okay, so they are actually saying under this head, they actually say that the elderly population, the life expectancy, that is the upper limit of the age up to which a particular person lives is actually going to increase. Okay, whereas the number of children who are going to be born from now till 2050 are going to be around the same 2.3 billion, which is of the current date. Okay, so that is what they are saying. So here it is going to talk about demographic transition, and because of that, what is the implication that the children will have? The second head is nothing but the environmental and climatic factors. Okay, so because of this, what is going to be the impact? Okay, whether the countries which are actually at major risk of this climate change, whether there what happens, the children are going to be translocated or not, whether they are going to face a lot of mortality because of pollution or not, all these things we'll discuss here. And finally, the third head after demographic transition, environmental and climate change, it is the frontier technology. Okay, this is nothing but due to the introduction or the advent of technology like artificial intelligence, internet of things, etc., how the children are going to be impacted, whether there's going to be exploitation, whether there's going to be post traumatic stress syndrome, all these things we'll actually be discussing here. Okay, so let's quickly see what the article actually says. So first is nothing but the demographic transition. If you look at this graph, it actually says that people are going to live longer and fewer children are going to be born from now till 2050. So here if you see the older population by the adult population by the year 2050, it is actually going to reach around 7.5 billion. But then the children population is almost going to be the same, that is 2.3 billion by 2050. So because of which, what is going to be how is it actually going to change? There are going to be regional shifts. Okay, regional shifts is that is majority of the children will be living in countries of South Asia and Africa and not in countries like East Asia, Pacific as well as Latin America. And here India, China and Nigeria, they are going to have around 1/3 of the world's children, and specifically if you see, India is going to have around 350 million children and China is going to have 141 million children. Okay, so what implications this is actually going to give? So if there are more number of children, there can be opportunities also, there can be challenges also. What are the opportunities? Here India can actually invest a lot. Okay, how? In education. They can actually bring about policies in healthcare. They can actually create a lot of jobs that is going to upskill the children. The second one is intergenerational dialogue, that is actually missing. So first one, opportunities, that is you create jobs. The second one is intergenerational dialogue, that is there will be an increased chance for the children to actually communicate with the elderly population, that is the grandparents who have life expectancy which is higher. Next one, the digital technologies also, it will actually make the children have social connections to the outside world. So these are the opportunities because of the demographic shifts. However, there are threats. Okay, if there are more number of children, what happens? There is also a possibility, that is if there are less number of children, there is also a possibility that there will be a reduction in the child focus resources as well as policy regulations. Also, there will be insufficient investments. This will lead to inequalities, and here what happens is that the children remain underserved. Also, there will be reduced growing up with, that is what happens now. The parents are actually going for either adopting a children or giving birth to only one child, right? Because of that, what happens? They do not have the opportunity to grow up with many siblings. So their social development will actually be hampered. So this is what is actually being discussed here. So the first mega trend, that is the demographic shifts, we've actually discussed. Now moving to the second trend, that is the climate change as well as environmental factors. So the climate change and environmental factors, the report actually says that there are, triple plenary crisis. What do you mean by this? Almost 1 billion children in the world actually live in areas or countries which are at a high risk of this particular climate change and environmental crisis. And what are the triple challenges? One is climate change, next one is biodiversity loss, and next one is pollution. Okay, so these are the points that this report is actually saying. One is climate change. This will actually affect the health of the children. Next one, there is biodiversity loss. This actually threatens the food and water security, and also pollution. This will actually harm the physical development of the child. Okay. So this is what is the climate and the environmental crisis. Now, what are the implications? First one, what is going to be the health impact? The health impact is going to be increased disease burden. Okay, when there is actually huge climate change impact, what happens? It results in a number of diseases, like you have the breakout of malaria, then we'll have diseases like dengue, and then we have Zika, etc. Okay. Next one is nutrition and food security. So because of the climate change as well as increased temperature, the crop or the productivity or the yield actually decreases. And because the yield decreases, what happens? This actually affects the food security of India. That obviously will affect the children as well. Next one is child mortality. Obviously, there will be increased mortality because of increased pollution. Okay, that is, here the children under the age of 5 will be affected more, and increased mortality is actually observed here. The next one is mental health. Here the children will be affected because of trauma. There will be lot of stress. There will be symptoms like post traumatic syndrome or stressed syndrome, and then you'll actually have a social isolation because they are helpless and they are alone. Okay, all these are there. Next one, how is education affected? It's because of the school closures. Now itself, if you see, because of immense air pollution in Delhi, there's actually closure of schools, right? So around 400 million children will actually be affected with respect to this. And also there will be learning gaps because not everybody is actually connected to the internet because of the digital divide in a huge country like India. Next one, there will be displacement. So here what happens is that children due to the environmental factors and crisis will be displaced to other places, and they will be subjected to exploitation. And apart from exploitation, there will be trafficking of human beings. Okay, so all these things will be there, and ultimately this will result in the death. Next is heightened risks of conflict because of the limited resources we are going to have, that is with respect to water or with respect to food. So there's going to be a lot of political implications or the repercussions that is going to be caused. And the final one is abuse of all these things results in breach of children right, and we are not giving them their right to live in a clean, healthy as well as a sustainable environment. Okay, so this is the implication because of the climate and environmental factors. So first mega trend of demography discussed, second mega trend of environment is discussed. So now the last one will actually be discussed here, that is the frontier technology. What do you mean by frontier technologies? These are cutting edge technologies which are capable of bringing transformative or a transformation in the society. For example, you have this chat GPT, that is the artificial intelligence. You have Internet of Things as well as the blockchain technology, etc. So because of this, what is going to be the implication? These are all general, right? Because of this, because of digital technology, there's going to be both opportunity as well as threat. Okay, the first opportunity, if you're not able to see here, let me, yeah. Yeah. So because of the digital technology, the opportunity you're going to have is you will be skilled for the future jobs, right? And also there will be remote learning and the knowledge access. Okay. However, here you have this, because of digital divide, not everyone actually has the access, and also you have lot of data leaks as well as privacy concerns and harmful content. Next one, with respect to neurotechnology, okay, we have opportunities as well. How? Because there is personalized education and neurotechnology. With respect to medicine, it helps in the diagnosis, early diagnosis, as well as treatment of the disorders. And what are the threats? This actually leads to potential misuse as well as cognitive liberty risk, that is data leaks. Next one, because of artificial intelligence, you have opportunities, that is it can create tailored learning activities as well as creative tools, and it provides improved healthcare services, okay, like by use of translation, etc. However, that actually has its own threat, that is it has biases and discrimination, and again there is digital divide, okay, that is global north versus the low resource regions, okay. So this is what is the implication of the third mega trend, okay. Now moving forward, so now we've actually discussed about the UNICEF report about state of the children globally under three megatrends, what is going to be the effect on them and the implications. Next one, Prime Minister proposes 7 key pillars to strengthen ties between India as well as the CARICOM. Okay, so this is actually a grouping. So you need to know this is nothing but the community of the Caribbean. So Caribbean community. Okay, so this is what it is. Let's see who are all the members. When was it actually found? Does it have an arbitration tribunal? Whether it actually has a court to resolve the disputes? Whether India is a part of it or not? And what are the 7 pillars that has actually been proposed by the Prime Minister? So here CARICOM is important under international relations as well as regional groupings, and this becomes important for your mains examination under GS paper 2, bilateral and regional groupings, as well as the agreements involving India and those affecting India's interest. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually see a previous year question. See, these groupings become very, very important, okay, whether India is a signatory or not, part of it or not, and which are the countries which are involved when it came into existence. So similarly, in 2016, there was a question on the members of Gulf Cooperation Council. So similarly, this CARICOM can be a potential question, okay. So here, the Prime Minister had proposed 7 key pillars to strengthen the ties between India as well as CARICOM, because recently he actually visited this particular country, that is Guyana, and this is actually the first ever visit by the Indian Prime Minister in more than 50 years. Okay, so what are the 7 pillars we can actually get from this CARICOM itself? Okay, so here it actually starts from, first one is capacity building. Okay, next is agriculture and food security. The third is renewable energy. Then the fourth will be innovation, and the fifth is trade. Next one is technology, etc. Okay, so these are the pillars that has actually been proposed by the Prime Minister in order to strengthen the ties between India as well as the CARICOM group. Now let us see what is actually the CARICOM. As I told you, it is the Caribbean community. That is, it's the oldest surviving integration. That is the grouping movement in the developing world. It has been established in the year 1973 after the signing of Treaty of the Chaguramas. Very, very important. And there it was signed by the prime ministers or the heads of Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, as well as Trinidad. Very, very important, because founding members, right? As well as it includes Tobago also. What are the key objectives of this grouping? Is that in order to promote the economic integration and cooperation, to ensure the benefits of integration, and that is all these should be equally shared, and also in order to coordinate the foreign policy. Okay, so this is the founding and the objectives. Now let us look at the members. It has 21 members, that is 15 members as well as 6 associated member states. Very important. Its secretariat is actually located at Guyana. Okay, so see here, it is located in Georgetown, Guyana. Members are 15 member states starting from Antigua and Barbuda, and then you have the Bahamas, you have the Guyana, you have Jamaica, as well as you have Saint Lucia, then Saint Vincent, etc. Very important. You have Suriname also and Trinidad. Okay. Here then you have 6 associate members, that is the Anguilla, Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, the Caicos Islands, as well as the Virgin Islands. All these, and the location on the map, the surrounding seas as well as water bodies becomes very important for your prelims. And also the body actually established something called as the Caribbean Court of Justice. This was established in the year 2007. Okay, and this actually serves as the final court of appeal for the members, and it is also involved in the resolution of the regional trade disputes. Okay, so this is what it is. Now moving forward, this is actually the map. Okay, so if you see the CARICOM member states, this actually includes the Bahamas, you have Jamaica, then you have Belize, Haiti, and then Antigua, Dominica, Lucia, Barbados, you have the Guyana here, you have Suriname here. All these are the countries which are actually involved in this particular grouping. Okay, so now let us actually solve a prelims practice question. Which of the following is not a member state of the CARICOM grouping? Jamaica, is it there or not? Yes, this is there. Guyana, yes, this is there. Bermuda, no, this is actually not there. And Suriname, okay, this is actually there. So here, except C, others are there. So your answer is C. Now moving forward, let us actually start with the fourth article. That is, should packaged food content be labeled? I told you, right, there is a lot of nutritional deficiency that is actually persisting across the globe. In order to address that, the people who are consuming it should be aware of what are the constituents, okay, of the packaged food that they are consuming, in order to, make sure that we live a healthy life. Okay, so in this particular article, we will be discussing about this particular food package labeling. Why is it very important, as well as the HSR rating. That is nothing but the health star rating. Okay. So this particular topic becomes very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination under GS paper 3. Food processing and related issues in India, the scope and significance, location, upstream and downstream requirements, as well as supply chain management. Okay, so this is very important. Now moving forward, here there has been a previous year question in the year 2011. That is, it says a marketing a company marketing the food products advertises that its items do not have trans fats. So this particular question was on trans fats. Okay, so next time the question can be on packaging and labeling, or which country with respect to that of India's regulatory framework with respect to same. All this can actually be a potential question. So now there has been a recent report that has actually been given by a multinational food and beverage this is actually a global, a report based on, it was given by Access to Nutrition Initiative. Okay, so this is an organization, Access to Nutrition Initiative, and this actually says that multinational food and beverage companies offer very less healthy products. This is not with respect to the higher income countries, but specifically the lower income countries. They are actually sending this. This is what is the findings of this particular report. Okay, so let us see. It has actually stated about that is the ranking. The report actually talks about the HSR rating. Okay, that is the health star rating. So what is the health star rating? It is nothing but the front of package labeling system that rates the overall healthiness of the food. So this actually can be 0.5, which is very poor quality or extremely high junk in nature, or it can be 5 stars, which is the best. And in between, if any rating above 3.5 is actually considered to be a healthier choice. This was initially developed by Australia and New Zealand. However, it is being imbibed in many of the countries, including that of India. Next, what is the criteria for scoring? First is risk components. It will actually see, it gives you a very poor rating when you have high levels of energy like calorie, carbohydrates and saturated fats, then sugars, sodium, all these things. This will actually reduce the score. And also, what are the benefit components? If your packaged food has nutrients like protein, fiber and presence of fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, etc., then the rating is actually increased. Okay, so this is what is the HSR rating. Moving forward, it has actually been found out by this report that the products in the low middle income countries, that is what is the LMICs, this actually scored at a very poor range of around 1.8. Okay, so this was actually the score in the low and middle income countries, whereas the rating is 2.3 in high income countries. And it also says only 30% of the companies actually have mechanisms or strategies where they will actually price the healthier products affordably. And that too, what happens, it actually becomes very difficult for the lower income countries to actually buy it or access these. So that is what this particular report says. Okay, now moving forward, let us see what is the status of food labeling of packaged foods in India. Okay, so here India is a signatory to the World Health Assembly resolution. So what was this particular resolution? This is actually to protect the children from harmful marketing of the junk foods. And also India brought about a regulatory framework, that is in 2017, that is National Multi-Sectoral Action Plan for Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases. Okay, this is to prevent. Okay. And also, if you see, the front of package labeling in India has been, however, very slowly developed. And next, if you see the food safety and standards labeling and display amendment regulation, that actually came in 2002. It has been 2 years now, okay, because we are completing 2024, but it has still been stalled without proper implementation. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, what is the requirement for labeling your food products? First is you can only if you take high calorie more of carbohydrates or sugars or cholesterol, what happens, you can actually have these non-communicable diseases. Okay, so you can tackle the NCDs by actually looking at your labels. That is why it prevents this obesity as well as diabetes, which are non-communicable diseases. And also it simplifies your choices, that it gives you a very clear picture and easy to understand the depiction of what healthier food you can have. This is next one. Next is the encouraging reformulation, that is it actually pushes all the manufacturers to reformulate their what to say constituents of the packaged material. So instead of using unhealthy fats as well as sugars in your content, you can make it more healthier. Then this addresses malnutrition, that is it helps India combat the dual burden of obesity as well as malnutrition on the other hand. And it empowers the consumers because it guides the budget consciousness of the households towards healthier food options. Okay, so this is what it says. Now moving forward, there is policy alignment, that is it complements. What is the significance of this HSR for India? Because India also has a very high health goals, right? So this particular HSR for India, it complements India's health goals and global commitments, and also protects the children from the misleading market of unhealthy food, especially that the children actually face off late. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, let us actually quickly solve this prelims question. With reference to India's initiative to address the health and nutrition concerns, consider the following. India is a signatory to the World Health Assembly resolution. Yes, this is actually correct. The National Multi-Sectoral Action Plan for Prevention and Control of NCDs was launched to address only the communicable diseases. No, it was the non-communicable diseases. So since only first statement is correct, the option, your answer will be option A. Okay, now let us actually move on to deal with the last article, that is India's under trial prisoners. Okay, so with respect to this particular article, I would like to say in the on 5th October, we have actually covered the entire detailed article on prison reforms of our DNA. Okay, so there you need to watch it. However, I'm going to just discuss about this under trials and what is actually the Supreme Court's interpretation with respect to the under trials, okay, in the jails. So this particular article becomes important for under trial prisoners in India. And what does section 479 of this BNSS, that is Bharatiya Nyaya Suraksha Sanhita, actually talks about. So whether it is a replacement of CRPC, whether it is IPC or Evidence Act, this is something you need to know. Okay. Now this particular topic becomes very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination under GS paper 2, functioning of the executive as well as the judiciary. Now let us actually quickly move forward. So there has actually been a question regarding how better can the National Human Rights Commission actually perform in order to protect the human rights standards. So this is a previous year question in the mains examination. So here the Human Rights Commission has actually given certain recommendations with respect to how to deal with the under trials in the prison. So that is why this becomes relevant for the examination. Now moving forward, let us see what is the article talking about. So recently the Union Home Minister actually said that the under trials who have actually spent more than 1/3 of the maximum prescribed sentence for the crime they are accused of committing should be released before the Constitution Day, which actually falls on 26th of November. Now for this we need to actually understand who are these under trials. Okay, so under trials are no one but they are individuals who are detained. Okay, they are actually kept in the jail during the pendency of the trial. So since there are a lot of backlogs of cases, what happens is that the prisons actually need a lot of reforms because there is actually less space, there is increasing population, that is increasing number of people. Specifically under trials constitute around 75% of the total people in the prison. So this is what you need to actually curb. And also it has been found out that these under trials, that is particularly they are from the marginalized sections of the society. They are particularly targeted, or the minorities, that is they are either the SCs or the scheduled tribes or people from the Muslim community, etc. So according to the census, what has been the findings, all that we will see. Okay, so here the under trials are individuals detained in the jail during the pendency of their trial, and when they are actually held there for a longer period of time, it is actually curbing them of the fundamental rights, that is Article 21, right to life and liberty, as well as Article 14, that is right to equality. Okay, so of the Constitution. Also, according to the National Crime Records Bureau, NCRB, total prisoners in itself is 5,73,000 only, out of which under trials are 4.5 lakhs, that is 75.8% of the total prisoners, and they have been increased since 2017 of about 40.7%. Also, there are demographic disparities. Disparities means there are biases on the marginalized communities and the socio-economic vulnerabilities according to the caste. According to the census, if you see, scheduled caste, they constitute 20.9, scheduled tribes around 6.5, and Muslims around 19.3, which is higher than their population share itself. The entire population share of Muslim community is around 14.2. Okay, so these are the findings. Okay, now moving forward, let us actually see what are the legal provisions, okay, in India, and what have been the judicial efforts that has been given by the Supreme Court and recommendations of various committees for the prison reforms in India. First of all, we should know that prisons actually come under the state list and not the union list. Okay, so it comes under state list under 7th schedule of the Constitution. And also we have the Model Prisons Act of 2023. This actually acts as a framework that guides the states in order to implement the conditions, or implement the this particular prison reforms for, and specifically focuses on the conditions of the under trials, and also says that they have to be treated very well. Next one, section 479 of the BNSS, it actually limits the detention period. It actually says that you need to reduce the amount of sentence, that is time of sentence, to half in case if they are not given a lifetime imprisonment or death. Okay, and also allows the release of first-time offenders who have spent more than 1/3 of the maximum period in the sentence. This is why the Home Minister has actually told to release them. Okay. Next one, what have been the Supreme Court directives? They actually said that we need to decongest the prisons, okay, and ensure bail for the under trials. And also the NHRC comes into picture here, and it recommended that you need to speed up your trials, you need to improve the legal aid, legal aid, and also there has to be timely release on bail. We need to reduce the overcrowding and also implement the prison reforms for the under trial. So this is what the NHRC has actually said. Now, let us quickly solve this particular question. That is, consider the following statements regarding the under trial prisoners in India. As per the NCRB report, under trials make up 75% of the total prison population in India. Yes, right? Out of the 5,50,000, around 4,73,000 were them. That is, 75% of them constitute. The prolonged detention violates Article 21 and 14. Yes, this is correct. Prisons and the detention of individuals fall under the union list. No, this is wrong. It is state list of the 7th schedule, under the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution. And the increase in the prisoners from 2017, if you see, it has actually increased by 40.7%. Yes, this is also correct. Since 1, 2 and 4 are correct, you can actually see that your answer will be option B. Now moving forward, we've actually come to the end of our discussion. So if you actually like the session, you can actually like, comment, as well as subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel for more live videos, as well as more such interactive sessions and interesting topics that will actually help you to ace this examination. Okay. So until then, it's actually bye from Sureka Bhaskar. Take care and have a good time.